Welcome, everyone. I'm Jerry Rivera Wilson with the School of Education. I am Director of Professional Development and Continuing Education. And today on edTrends, we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence. This is a part of a two-part series. And this is the initial segment on artificial intelligence on a broader umbrella calling Advancing K-20 Education Beyond the 21st Century. And today's session, we are going to focus on exploring artificial intelligence, how it is reshaping education. Our second segment, which will be on April 17th, will be on smart classroom, harnessing the power of AI. Our planning committee, which I would like to acknowledge today, consisted of the individuals predominantly from the Department of Educational Theory and Practice within the School of Education, Dr. Haesol Bay, Jonathan Foster, Jason Vickers. To do a welcome from the School of Education, Dr. Ginny Goatley, Dean of the School of Education.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased you are joining us today. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our edTrends conversation about AI. AI Plus is UAlbany's holistic approach to integrating teaching and learning about AR across our academic and research programs to ensure every graduate is prepared to live and work in a world radically changed by technology in the coming decades. I know many of you have reached out to the University at Albany as you've heard about our multiple hires with AI expertise over the last year. At UAlbany, A+ is not a program within the university. It is an institution-wide recognition of the centrality of AI to the future of knowledge creation, scientific discovery, creative expression, and workforce development. And UAlbany is the leading figure in these conversations. Within the School of Education, we have educators, leaders, policymakers, mental health practitioners, many areas involved in all aspects of education. And as Jerry mentioned earlier, we are currently ranked number 4 for online master's programs in education by the U.S. News and World Report. Technology is an important component of all aspects of our programs. School of Education faculty are leaders in the field nationally and globally. We have expertise in areas such as early literacy, STEM, higher education. We're a New York site for the Master's Teacher Program, which routinely works with faculty and students actively engaged in conversations about STEM areas, including AI, that are a continuing part of our edTrends series, and you're always welcome to join those conversations as well. We're so pleased to have you join us, and I want to give a special shout out to our faculty who participated in putting together these 2 panel presentations. So many thanks, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I learned today as well. So thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to our facilitator this afternoon, Dr. Jonathan Foster.
Hi, everyone. So glad to have you here today. And I'm really excited about our 3 panelists that's going to share their expertise and what they've been working on with artificial intelligence in education today. So we will now turn to our 3 panelists. So the first panelist we have is Dr. Christina Agve. Christina, do you want to do a brief hello and welcome?
Sure. Hi, thank you all for joining us today. I'm Christina, and I'm the founder of Trifecta Education, where I work with school districts and institutions of higher ed to help them develop policy and integrate AI into their learning environments, everything from professional development to the students. And I have a book that I've written, which is all research-based about that very topic called AI Engaged Future-Proof Education. And, my belief is that we really need to be jumping on this as soon as possible so that we are educating both our students and our faculty or teachers, professors on the ethical and effective use of AI. So thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be a part of this.
Thank you, Christina. And then we also have Brett Rower. Brett, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Brett Rower. Today I'm representing the AI Education Project, also known as AI-EDU. I'm really fortunate that I get to work really across the United States on great projects bringing AI literacy, that foundational knowledge, to educators in better service of students. Really focused right now on working across the state of Ohio in rolling out an AI toolkit in conjunction with the Lieutenant Governor's Office, hosting AI summits, so trying to bring innovative instructors to the state of Ohio, as well as showcasing and amplifying the amazing AI work already happening in classrooms and schools across the state. And I also am fortunate to get to work on some of the projects for the upcoming ASU GSV Summit, GSV Air Show, and then right here where I'm based in the New York area on empowering New York City public school educators through foundational AI literacy. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Brett. And then we also have Dr. Patty Ruiz. Patty?
Hi, everyone. I am Senior Director of EdTech and Learning Technologies at Digital Promise. Recently moved over from the Learning Sciences research team where I was a senior researcher. I spent 16 years in the classroom myself, teaching mostly middle school and high school computer science, as well as Spanish, which is my first language. And when I was on the Learning Sciences research team, I was specifically focused on emerging technologies, including AI and machine learning, as well as equity, ethics, and inclusion, belonging in tech, as well as in education, and teacher professional learning. So I'm excited to be here today to talk to you more about our exciting work in AI literacy, as well as what we're doing for professional learning.
Thank you so much, Patty. So we'll turn to our questions, and we'll start at sort of a basic level and thinking about what is AI. So we've probably seen how Hollywood depicts AI, but I'm going to start with our panelists, and I maybe start with Christina. What is AI and how does it work?
So, great question. And I often start with this as well, because a lot of people do have misconceptions about what artificial intelligence is or its role in industry or in education. And so when we talk about artificial intelligence, we're really talking in simplest terms about the ability for machines to mimic human intelligence. And by doing so, they're enabled to perform tasks that, you or I would traditionally do. And so we can look at AI as a giant umbrella, and it encompasses many types of AI. And ones that you probably hear most frequently about are machine learning. So machine learning is a subset of AI. And so machine learning uses statistical techniques, right, to enable machines to perform these tasks. And it actually it improves at tasks as it continues to do them. A great example of this is your email. So if you have an email account, which I'm sure we all do, and you have that infamous spam box in there, you get things that get sent into your spam box that shouldn't belong there, and the reverse. You've got things in your inbox that belong in spam. So when you click "This is spam," you're teaching your email what is spam and what isn't, and it's learning from that, and moving forward, something that maybe was in the spam will no longer go into the spam. So that's a very simple example of how machine learning works. And then another area that I like to talk about is natural language processing, which also is another AI type. And so in natural language processing, that's an interface that allows interaction between the human and the computer. And in this case, it gives the computer the ability to interpret, understand, and generate human language in a meaningful way, which brings us to something like ChatGPT, which is a large language model which does exactly that. We can enter a prompt, we can ask it questions, we can ask for information. I mean, we can do just about anything with ChatGPT nowadays. So we've got this giant umbrella of AI, and then we've got multiple subsets, but the ones that we see most commonly and use most commonly would be the machine learning is probably part of everyone's everyday life, natural language processing. If you've ever been on a website and you need to translate it into another language, you can click that button and it'll automatically translate it for you. And then that brings us into something like ChatGPT. And when we're looking at a lot of the AI tools that are being used, things like, if you've heard of Magic School or TeacherBot, many of these programs are running on actually ChatGPT's format or another similar language, large language model. And so that's really where most of the things that we're seeing in many of the things we're seeing in education now, and especially what's getting pushed out to teachers at an unbelievable rate, right? Try me, use me, I'll do this for you. I can do 60 things for you. These are all large language models that operate from prompts and can respond to us and interact with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for getting us started on that, Christina. Yeah, it's crazy to think now, like with ChatGPT and large language models, those are all within the public discourse now, when, maybe 5 years ago, it wasn't. And so I think that's a lot of draw for us here today is what is AI? What is ChatGPT? What are large language models? Patty, Brett, anything you want to add?
I'll add one resource for folks. I just dropped in a glossary of artificial intelligence terms for educators that my colleague Judy Fusco and I have been working on for several years. We continually update this. This is a resource co-developed with core AI folks and researchers that are part of the Center for Integrative Research in Computing and the Learning Sciences. And what we did was work with educators as well as the core AI folks to make sense of these terms for educators. And like I mentioned earlier, we've gone ahead and made updates to these definitions. So these are a good place to start for folks as you work with them to get up to speed on what artificial intelligence is and how it fits in education. So please check those out. And if you have recommendations for us to add to them, we're always looking for those.
Patty, is large language models in the glossary,
Large language models, yes. So, and we define neural nets, deep learning, natural language processing as well. So we have a lot of related terms in the definitions.
Great, thanks, Patty. I think we're going to turn to the next question. And what is AI literacy and why is it important for students and teachers today? Brett, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I've definitely noticed, again, getting to work across a number of different states, that just finding a baseline, similar to how our other panelists just kind of gave an overview and key definitions of what is AI. Similarly, we need to think about what AI literacy is, what it isn't, and what it does for educators specifically. So, at AIDU, we really try to formulate a baseline that AI literacy is the collection of the skills, the knowledge that you would need to understand to be able to use and critically evaluate artificial intelligence. So as Christina just mentioned, there's so many tools out there, and that's just going to continue to proliferate. And so helping people recognize like what AI is, how to make sure that you prioritize or use the tools that are going to most effectively help you reach your goals in artificial intelligence through education. That's just step one for us. So a lot of what we do is help educators recognize where we are, how did we get to this moment in AI, especially as it pertains to education, where is it going, and then what are those basic skills, critical skills you would need to have in order to best use those tools, and then showcase and share those with other members of your learning community, especially most importantly, obviously, the students.
Brett. And Patty, I know you've been working in this area too with developing an AI literacy framework. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, happy to. And Brett's team and our team are working together to make sure this makes sense for folks at different levels, including the students, of course, students, communities, educators, and education leaders. I'll drop another link in chat to share our AI literacy framework. For us, AI literacy includes the knowledge and skills that enable humans to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI systems and tools to safely and ethically participate in an increasingly digital world. And I'd encourage folks to take a look at the framework. We have a nice little image. It's a set of triangle arrows that connect back to one another, because we definitely see this as a process. And we're hoping that this will encourage folks to take many different on-ramps into AI, and specifically their development of AI literacy, because we're finding that folks tend to gravitate towards one area. So they like to kind of come in from a critical perspective and learn about AI, starting with that. But we also think it's important to develop the skills and practices, which is included in our understanding AI section. And then we also think that obviously using, interacting, creating, and applying with AI systems and tools is another area that's important. We're continuing to develop, as I mentioned, and this is where we're working with Brett's team to develop a white paper so that we can explain and dig into the skills and practices that are really included in AI literacy for us. And we're hoping to publish that late April, early May. So stay tuned for more from us on AI literacy.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Brett. Christina, just giving you a chance to respond. What have you been thinking about?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think one of the pieces that we're missing in general is that ability to evaluate, and that's a really important part of AI literacy. We need to learn how to use the tools. We need to learn, the foundational knowledge and skills, but we need to understand where these tools come from. How are they made? Who's making them? When I look at an AI tool, I go right to the maker's website. I look to find their philosophy or their statements of, what's their stance on security and privacy? What tool, what model are they building this on? And sometimes you'll find products out there that will not disclose all of that information. And so for whatever reasons, maybe it's proprietary or they don't want to share their secrets. But, when I see something like that, I just shy away from those tools, because we're not talking about something small here. We're talking about tools that could potentially interfere or have cybersecurity impacts or impact data security or student, FERPA, and all of those things that are important to us. And so I really think that evaluate component and understanding, yes, what the tool is and how to use it and what its impact on society is as well. Why was this tool developed, and what impact is it going to have? Is this a superhero, or does this have the potential to be a villain without the proper safety precautions in place? So I echo both Patty and Brett on that.
Christina, I see your hand, Brett.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate something that is really important when we talk about the policy level. I think educators are fantastic at critically evaluating learning tools out there. I think the fact that AI is an innovation, it's a new technology, but those same aspects and those same tools and lens that you use to critically evaluate things for your students and your classrooms, please make sure educators give themselves that credit that they deserve, and embrace through, learning webinars such as this, the amazing organizations that are represented here today, that AI literacy is really just getting you to embrace and feel more comfortable with a new innovation in technology and education. But to something that Christina just said, there's definitely an equity piece here as well. Really making sure that this is widespread and accessible for all learning communities and all districts, because there is going to be this digital divide in AI literacy, that's already developing. And the fact that we really need to make sure educators that don't typically get access to these high level of innovation or feel comfortable and fluent in technological advances are really brought up to speed immediately to ensure that this digital divide doesn't take itself past where we already are post-pandemic.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to the next question of what resources are available out there for educators to improve their own AI literacy. Any recommendations for educators to point them to or to what they could look for?
Patty, go ahead. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Just to speak to one of the ways that AIDU is supporting folks, we're working with amazing partners such as Digital Promise and other leaders in AI and policy. But we were fortunate through the founder, Alex Cotran, working directly with the Ohio Lieutenant Governor's Office. They were able to recently, almost exactly a month ago, roll out an AI toolkit across the entire state that really supports all different stakeholders with AI education policy, resources for parents, teachers, building and district level leaders. And it really provides a comprehensive resource for all stakeholders to figure out where do I fit in to the innovation that's trying to take place across Ohio. So that's just one way that we're trying to work together. There are a handful of other states that have also released AI toolkits for the entire state around AI education policy. But finding national partners, especially in the nonprofit space like Digital Promise, those are great resources to start finding templates, models, and current guidance on how to implement AI safely, ethically, equitably, and effectively.
Thank you, Brett. Patty?
I was actually going to point to Brett's resources as well. The AI EDU resources we find super helpful and have built off of those. We also have found the AI pedagogy project out of Harvard to be super helpful because it's an open guide for folks to start at 3 different parts depending on where they are, and it's a kind of low barrier to entry into what AI is and starting to understand the tools that are available, whether folks are integrating AI into their teaching or not, or just learning for themselves. But it really focuses on how to do that responsibly. And I highly recommend the 3-part tutorial, which includes an LLM tutorial, which refers back to where we started this conversation earlier.
Thank you so much, Patty and Brett, for sharing that. And I see some folks are also sharing some resources in the chat as well. I'll just say we will post all of these resources on Trends as well. So if you missed something, feel free to go back to edTrends and get a link to those resources. All right, I think we'll go to the next slide. And our next question, how can AI literacy be incorporated into existing curriculums? Are there any successful examples of this or any resources?
Yeah.
Christina, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So this is one of the topics of my book, and the entire second half is dedicated to this and dedicated on the existing research and some of the case studies out there. What I see happening, or the ultimate, is to create a multidisciplinary approach, right? We don't want to give our students, whether it's the K-12 sector or in higher education or tech schools, we don't want this to be a one and done. We can't possibly give them one course and say, oh, you now learned all about AI. Now, might that be appropriate for some of that foundational knowledge? Sure. But even looking at, the digital promise model where we're moving towards applying, we've got to take that next step. And there's no better way to apply something than doing it where it's relevant to the learner or relevant to the curriculum. And so when we're looking at this, for me, when I work with schools, it's kind of 3 steps. We develop policy. We develop a definition of AI literacy, because I think it's important to note there is no one definition of AI literacy. It is something that's flexible and malleable, and you can create something that works for you and your school or your learning environment. And then you break that down and say, okay, well, this is our definition. How do we get there? And the piece of how do you get there, that's the knowledge and skills that you're defining. And those can get woven into curriculum. For example, if we're talking about a higher education course or even a high school course on marketing, yes, we want our students to have the ability to do a market analysis for a product they might, be representing. And they can do that the traditional way, manually, with some computer assistance. You might be doing data searches and things like that. But then we also want to look at that. How can we do that with AI? And so you're bringing it together, and maybe the assignment looks like, hey, you do it manually, then you do it with AI, and then you bring that together and synthesize and identify, because we have to also remember that everything we get out of these large language models, one, isn't true, and two, has inherent biases, or implicit bias. And so training our students to not only use them and the knowledge and the skills, but to apply them in meaningful ways that are going to serve them in the future. And so when using a multidisciplinary approach, you're weaving that tool in just as you would a pencil, just as we did with laptops, just as we do with certain other type to teach, right? Maybe that's not a good example. That shows you how old I am. But when we're looking at this, it can't be exclusive of what's happening in your classrooms. It needs to be woven in meaningful ways. And whether that's setting up a list of competencies or outcomes or objectives that you work towards and taking it in small pieces. I mean, no one's suggesting that you write a manifesto for AI and identify 100 skills and try to cram them into your curriculum, but starting small so that they are learning and applying and then evaluating the end product. Because what industry is looking for right now is someone who can do those three things: manual, driven by AI, and then evaluate the product to complete something that is the ultimate piece of work.
Christina. Brett?
Yeah, I was fortunate to present this Monday with a New York City public school principal at the EdTech Summit in New York City. And this principal is using Magic School and is an early adopter. And they really repurposed their lesson planning, how they're using co-planning time, how they're giving instructional feedback. And they're slowly implementing it into all of their templates, lesson plans, unit plans, kid talks, to just show, right, here's a resource and a tool. So one thing I am seeing is how to bring AI literacy to where teachers currently are, is by taking what they already are comfortable with and just putting in gradual implementation. So that's just one highlight I've seen recently about taking what already works in your school, enhancing it for a number of reasons, obviously to make teaching more effective, learning outcomes improve, but meeting people where they are and taking them and scaffolding it is what education leaders and educators do best. Please continue to think of AI as that same, you need that same approach, obviously just around a different concept. One other thing I recently saw, just to shout out a few nonprofits, PlayLab. I was fortunate enough to see a very brief AI literacy PD performed by AIEDU, immediately turnkeying that to new teachers in the state of Hawaii, teaching fellows, to try PlayLab for the first time. And they immediately said, yes, this is something I can use tomorrow in my classroom to make a better lesson. And I also was fortunate to see that when they worked with a small professional learning collaborative here in New York City. Teachers, educators, district level officials all had only been using PlayLab for a few hours and were then able to showcase it after a very brief introduction to AI literacy. So to support Christina's point, giving people the basics that they need to kind of understand and feel comfortable with AI, but then immediately giving them something that can turnkey the work they do, that can inspire them, that can create these light bulb moments, is just super important for educators and meeting them where they are.
Thank you, Christina and Brett, for that reminder of we are educators, do take a purposeful approach, maybe start small. The tools are going to change year after year, but really take a step back and think about how am I integrating this meaningfully and purposefully into the classroom. All right. So we'll go to the next question. It's sort of a big question. So what is the future of AI in education? And I have some sub questions here for us to think about. We don't have to tackle all of them, but just broadly, what is the future of AI in education? And I think I'll start with Patty.
Yeah, thank you. So we've been seeing AI in education for many years now, and we think that the speed at which we're seeing changes now is really going to continue. So what we've been talking about already, including developing AI literacy and being able to thoughtfully evaluate the tools and technologies that are being used, is going to be incredibly important. We're seeing specific ways in which AI systems and tools can support teaching and learning, and are seeing that where this is successful is where teachers have been able to rethink pedagogy because of this new tool, right? So we're seeing English teachers who are now asking students to discuss books more like a book club where they relate what they've read to their own lives. Because we all know that one of the main concerns is cheating and students using generative AI specifically to produce essays. And so teachers were shifting the conversation and shifting pedagogy to ensure that they are able to assess student learning in different ways, I think have seen a lot of success. Um, Teachers are using generative AI to have their students demonstrate learning as well. So changing the assignments so that they can leverage the technology for visualizations and geometry. We're also seeing opportunities for teachers who are supporting their students who have IEPs so that they can stay with their classmates longer. For example, using image generators to complete assignments, specifically in an art class, for example, where the student can work with an aide within the main classroom so that everyone can learn together and leverage these tools to support their learning. So we're seeing some really exciting applications. All the while, we know that it's important that all students have access. The National EdTech Plan called out 3 divides, right, when it comes to access to these emerging technologies. And we want to make sure that we can provide access to all students so that everyone is able to learn. So I'm talking specifically about the digital access divide, but then that digital access divide leads to being able to create, right? Because once students become creators of these technologies, they can also sit at the design tables and continue to create technologies that are accessible for everyone, right? And especially our historically and systematically excluded learners and populations and their communities, because we are seeing that the communities themselves are turning to the schools to learn more about how to use these tools and how to leverage them appropriately. So we think that that will continue in the future. And so it's our responsibility to develop AI literacy skills ourselves so that we are able to continue learning together.
You know, I can add that the accessibility is really coming to the forefront more than ever. I do a lot of work in the state of Colorado, and they have implemented policy now that, you know, schools are being fined if they're using technology tools that are not accessible for all students. And so we see schools now and districts scrambling, you know, to meet with vendors to make sure that they're meeting these accessibility standards. And you know, the penalty is pretty big. It's I think it's, you know, for a school district, it's, you know, $3,500 an instance if you're caught using a tool that doesn't adhere to those policy and those standards. And you know, as we all know, school budgets are not the most grandiose, so it's got huge implications. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that in other states. I don't think Colorado is going to be the only one in 50 states. I can't speak for every state, but you know, we've really got to be cognizant of what we're bringing into the classrooms. And, you know, can all of our students access it and use it in some way, shape, or form to have the same access to learning? So it's an important one, for sure.
I want to echo a couple things I heard here. One is, especially when it comes to students, the topic that I know we're still navigating and how to make educators, especially teachers, feel comfortable with is the students using AI for cheating, right? Even though studies suggest it is not this massive crisis, we do know how that feels to feel as an educator that you're not 100% aware of the situation and you just don't feel like you're empowered to support students. So one thing we're doing at AIDU in partnership with Schmidt Futures is hosting an AI challenge at the air show, the GSV air show taking place next month in San Diego. And we're actually reaching out to Southern California schools. So a couple Digital Promise League of Innovative School Districts are some of our first champion partners, El Segundo and Cajon Valley. And what we're actually doing is we're providing students and an educational advisor with an acceptable AI use policy, a framework that there are many of. We happen to use one that is adopted from the North Carolina AI toolkit. But it allows teachers and students to have a dialogue around what would be an acceptable way to repurpose an assignment you've done before or an upcoming assignment, and how do you align it to current AI acceptable use policies that are out there. And again, it just drives the conversation of how do you either make this more AI proof, how do you make it more AI friendly, and what are you then assessing if students actually have the ability to use AI? And it's been really exciting to hear educators, some saying, yep, we're already doing stuff like this. It's amazing. And we can do this in 2 minutes and have amazing things for you. And others who are recognizing this is where education needs to go. So thanks for empowering us. We're still nervous about this journey, but we're going to try it with you because that's what innovative schools and leaders are doing right now. So just want to name embracing AI around what you currently do and thinking about with your students, how could we be utilizing this more effectively to capture the learning? Which is some of the things we're talking about here, is here. It's already happening, and we're hoping to find additional schools that want to do things like that across the country because it's so fascinating to see people's reaction to this evolution of what are you really assessing and how can AI either help support that or personalize the learning process for students and educators.
Brett, I'm so glad you circled back to the concerns around cheating because you're right. In the study recently done out of Stanford by Denise Pope and Victor Lee found that generative AI doesn't necessarily increase cheating. Cheating's already very rampant in high schools. For those on the call who work with high schoolers, middle schoolers know this already. So thank you for calling out that these tools aren't necessarily increasing instances of cheating that we can tell from the research, but they do provide us with opportunities to rethink education and assessment, pedagogy and assessment, really.
Thank you for also bringing up students coming to the table and also having a voice in the acceptable use of AI. I think for a lot of educators, they will be surprised at what their students think about using AI in the classroom.
A great resource for that is a nonprofit. It's called AI for Education, and they have a lot of free resources. One of which is, hey, when can I use AI? When is it appropriate to use AI, and how to use it? You know, kind of like a little flow chart. And you know, that's something that I always share with teachers because it helps them help their students. And it's true. It's not the biggest fear. Is typically, we don't want it, they're going to cheat. And I always go back to the calculator war of the 1970s where, you know, teachers went on strike over the calculator. And then they were, you know, then we had spell check in Microsoft and oh, what damage will that do? And then there's Grammarly. And so we've faced these technological challenges before. It's just that this is happening a lot faster and it's a lot more intense than we've faced, but it doesn't mean it's insurmountable. And it definitely does mean that we have to start thinking about the way we're teaching and assessing for sure. And it's, you know, I read a study. It's not the lazy kids who are using ChatGPT in the classroom. It's quite the opposite. You know, students are using this to help them outline their thoughts, or they get stuck somewhere, or they don't understand something, or they're using it to increase their studying skills or efficiency, or creating study guides. And so we really need to start thinking along those, not penalties, not penalizing, but talking about academic integrity and keeping things in a positive light and not, pulling the plug. I was at a school district last week where they pulled the plug on ChatGPT for their teachers, for their students. You're absolutely not going to use it. And I'm in a room full of teachers and the entire IT team who pulled the plug and said, no way, we're not doing this. And so it's once people become more educated, we start shifting dispositions, right? Values and beliefs. That starts opening that door and enables that scaffolding of learning that, Brett talked about earlier. We just need to crack that door open for, those schools that have pulled the plug or those who are adamantly opposed to it, because in the end, they're really doing a disservice to their students. Right now, there was a study that came out, 77% of parents believe that AI holds great potential to enhance their child's learning. Parents are on board. I think it was something like 63% of students want to see change in the educational system. They believe AI can help them. So come on, teachers, right? Like, come on, district leaders. I think we're in a really unique position, because how often do you see students saying, give me more? I want this. It can help me. I want to learn about it. It's really a great time for us to jump in and facilitate some really meaningful learning with eager and willing participants, both in the school and out. So
The second bullet point, something that I think is the biggest unlock from AI in education, is going to be personalized learning. And recently, again, highlighting Cajon Valley, sorry, when I met with one of their leaders in one of their buildings, they said, we personalize learning every day in every class using AI. And I said, oh, what tool are you using? And they said, we use Schooljoy. So I'm just highlighting a tool. I was fortunate to meet their founder recently. Essentially, it matches students regardless of what your objective and lesson is, right? We know teachers are making those daily. It actually gives students, through a very quick personal inventory, a way that every single lesson aligns with your future professional goals, your future post-secondary goals, and your current passions and interests. And it takes personalized data such as, recent assessment data, potential IEP, 504, ENL data, and it combines all that to make sure you're getting at the right reading level or the right math level, the scaffold you need, but it actually presents it around your current and future passions and goals. And so what I said to the founder, I said, if you can showcase a teacher building that assignment and then showing 4 different students and what those assignments look like on a screen with a push of a button, and imagining that could push out to all students in a room with a one-to-one device infrastructure, I said, you've authentically personalized learning at the push of a button. Teachers are still creating the same thing. They still know what is valuable to students in terms of objectives and in terms of the learning standards and rigor. But now you're meeting every student where they are, you're matching their passion, you're engaging them in the learning process. And so for me, I always tell people, find the light bulb moment. And for me, I said, that would be the light bulb moment to show anyone in education that you can keep education rigorous and you can personalize it at a push of a button, taking authentic student data that can work with all of your data integration systems and FERPA policies to empower students through AI. So just want to highlight, finding those light bulb moments and technologies and then amplifying them is a really, really important value that I have right now.
For these set of questions on this slide, Patty, just going to give you an opportunity. Any final thoughts you want to add?
I would agree with Brett. It's about finding those examples of what's working for teachers. I worked with Mountain View Los Altos High School District in California recently, and one of their history teachers was using generative AI to support her students in developing a vocabulary list. So this is for English language learners. This teacher used to spend time herself developing a vocabulary list that were appropriate for each of the levels of her students that were in the class when they were preparing for class discussions. She has now taught the students to generate those lists themselves based on the topic that they're working on, and then she checks those lists with the students to verify and validate that the content that was produced is appropriate for the class discussion. But those are the examples that we need to continue to capture and highlight for teachers so that they can see how these tools can be leveraged to support their students and the needs of the students.
Patty, Brett, and Christina. I'm just going to check in with Jerry. Jerry, do we have any questions in the chat? If not, I have a couple more questions.
No, we do not.
All right.
Jonathan, can I jump in? I did drop 2 links in chat because on one of the AI institutes that I work on, it's one of the National Science Foundation AI institutes. We've been working and interviewing students to better understand what they think about AI tools for education. And what we've found is similar to what Christina and Brett have also been saying, that the students are recognizing the potential for AI for personalized learning, and they have sophisticated insights about how they want AI to support them in their own learning. We were doing the study around narrative storytelling for students, specifically for science learning, but we did find that they know what they want. We need to engage them and their ideas in the co-design process because they have valuable ideas about the design of classroom AI tools. Including them early in that design process will be important to continue doing, as well as teachers and families. But yes, important to bring in the students. We also worked with middle schoolers and high schoolers, having them interpret the White House guidance on the AI Bill of Rights that came out late last year. And they had, again, sophisticated insights about what their rights are when it comes to AI and the use of AI. So engaging students in those types of activities in the classroom is also one important step in helping them better understand how AI might fit with what they're doing in an everyday setting, because these tools are coming in not just in their school environment, but also at home.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those resources, Patty. To the panelists, how can teachers stay up to date on the latest developments in AI for education? What do you think, Christina?
Well, I, for one, subscribe to about 10 newsletters a day that I go through, everything from industry related and on the techie end up until to like quick tips and tools. And I think if teachers can find even just one, great resource, like the ones that have been listed here today, whether it's through Digital Promise or through Brett's organization, whatever they are, if they can find one resource that with which they feel comfortable working, where they find the information applicable, where it's easy to access and it's not going to consume their time, because let's face it, right? Teachers are inundated with work. As it is right now, I just read a study that the average teacher spends 4.9 hours a day in direct instruction with their students. There's a whole lot of time being spent in prep work and preparing and behavioral issues. And so if we can find ways to give or receive quick snippets of information, even how to use a tool, how to write a prompt, I think that's the key is small. Start small. Don't try to, jump in and, don't jump into the deep end and, wade in through the shallow end, and start small. Start with something that we've talked about already today, about feeling with something you're comfortable with and having that as a go-to resource for you. And then, gradually wading into the deep end, as opposed to, trying to jump into something that's a little bit too big.
Yeah, I think on the head that teachers, educators are too busy. So helping them find solutions is incredibly important. I will say, as a principal, I was not able to find innovation unless it literally came right to my front door. So I would say to the educators out there right now, using social media platforms like LinkedIn, just finding a couple of these orgs and following them allows things literally to come to your feed. I have found some of the programs that I've listed today through just really inspiring LinkedIn posts and then following up. So just curating like what you're using that brief time you might have to find innovation, find a few newsletters, follow some innovative solutions on LinkedIn. These larger groups like a Digital Promise that are highlighting great things. I think that's step one. And then also, whenever there is professional development obviously available to you within your district or your area, checking those out. And then things like the Air Show in California, right? This is going to be one of the biggest convenings of AI focused solutions as well as innovative educators trying to find ways to get to those types of things, which is it's a free event, can be literally life changing. It can change how you view education and it can change what you're doing on a daily basis. So easier said than done for busy educators, but just start small and also try like one thing and reflect on that. Some of the ones we mentioned today, many of those tools are free to educators right now to just explore, try, and get your feet wet in the AI literacy and AI tools out there.
I'm going to be super real right now. Hashtag teachers of TikTok. Like I know, right? TikTok, oh no, and it's not the most scientific but I'll tell you, that's why I'm on TikTok. I have an account on TikTok and I post, tips and tools just like I do on LinkedIn. But I find a lot of great, good ideas of how other teachers might be using tools. And am I finding scientifically based research there? No, that's not why I go there. I go there and I get quick tips or quick tools and so if you're on social media already, just take a minute and search out, like Brett said, search out something that's specific to AI, and it's automatically going to pop up into your feed, and you're scrolling anyways, so it'll be right there for you. And so I echo that. I think that's a great way to get information.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Brett. We do have one question in the chat. It's kind of two parts. It's from David. I'll just kind of summarize saying, some students only have access to school devices. So sometimes those students are closed out of AI applications, where some students, they have their own personal device, so unlimited access to AI tools. The other point that he brings up is, developing policies for these tools could seem like, outdated by next year. You develop one policy, here comes a new tool that, wasn't in the scope of that policy. What advice would you give to maybe a school leader considering these two constraints, let's say?
I can take this one because I currently have a National Science Foundation grant doing exactly this. So supporting district leaders to develop their acceptable use policies for generative AI. And we've expanded that to support them in developing their acceptable use policies more broadly for any emerging technology that comes up, because we know that it's not going to stop with generative AI and there will continue to be changes. One of the things that we've found in that study, we're set to release our guidelines in April at the Consortium for School Networking Conference in Miami. We're co-branding this with COSIN because they are supporting and providing reviews for us. And they are definitely experts in technology policy space. But we're building off of the work that I did, again, through the Center for Integrative Research in Computing and the Learning Sciences, where we really figured out that there were 3 areas where district leaders needed guidance. This was co-designed with, again, core AI folks, but also district leaders and other education folks throughout the school and district level. We really think a lot about the initial evaluation, the adoption and the post-adoption, but when it comes to setting policies for what should be used in the classroom, we find that teachers need guidance and guidance that will be coming out soon. We're supporting Teach AI in some policy recommendations as well, is what COSIN has already released, which is the stoplight method, which is the red light is do not use generative AI here. Yellow, you can use caution when applying it for these uses, and then green. And again, that is very dependent on your district context. So it's gonna be a continual process, David, of needing to reevaluate and work with your community. As part of our study, we interviewed community members, so family members, students, teachers, as well as other education leaders to better understand their needs. And again, we're still sifting through our findings and are trying to group our acceptable use policy language in ways that are helpful for a broad community so that they can pick and choose what makes sense to them. But again, looking to other district leaders for what they've done, it has been super helpful. And that's the content that we're hoping to produce and share with all of you in April. So I guess to go back to the earlier question, follow the Digital Promise blog, because that's where all of these things come out, or our newsletter.
Sharing that, Patty. Christina, Brett, I know you've been working with school leaders as well. Any advice for David?
I'll just circle back to the idea of academic integrity. I often, will come to review policy, and it's really focused on penalizing students. It's following that plagiarism model that we might all remember from, our higher ed days or high school days, where don't plagiarize, cite your work, or this will happen. And so for me, to create policy that's going to stand the test of time, regardless of which direction AI goes in, it's really about clearly defining what is academic integrity and what does this mean to you as a learner, as a teacher, and getting everyone on board with that, and really making sure that what you're doing is relevant, because as relevancy increases, cheating decreases. So, academic integrity and relevancy, I think, will hold far more weight than punitive measures when it comes to policy writing.
Yeah, first, David, I just want to thank you for raising this really key point. Again, it goes back to equity. The digital divide outside of classrooms and districts is going to be a challenge. So thank you for just making sure we address that before we left today. And also, it is making sure, as everyone has said, is really being holistic first, right? Starting with these general ideas about what you or your district want. Don't get in the weeds with each AI tool, because you've already hit it on the head. It's going to be outdated by the time I finish this sentence. So yes, definitely embrace the more holistic approach. I loved what Patty just mentioned. Again, red light, green light, yellow lights, a 1 through 4 in acceptable use policies, clear, a 0 meaning none, 4 meaning full, and then somewhere in between. Work from that and help your constituents in your district, wherever you fall on that, as an educator, a leader, or a student, or a parent. Help craft that and be part of that voice. People like you definitely need to be part of that process for districts that are thinking about those students not getting left behind.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Christina. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope everybody got something out of it, and just learning, what different folks are doing across the country with AI in education. Jerry, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Well, I want to thank again our panelists for joining us today and for sharing their time and their expertise. And you're right, it is a growing area. What is relevant today may be obsolete tomorrow, but that's the beauty of AI and the beauty of growth, right? And so I want to let everyone know, if they haven't been following in the chat, that this segment of our AI series will be available on atlased.org, as well as the resources that we've curated and the resources that were shared in today's session. Our next session on AI will be on April 17th on smart classrooms. and harnessing the power of AI. We touched upon that a little bit today in the series of questions that we raised to the panelists. So if you can join us, we welcome you to join us again on next month. And we will have a different a different panel group joining us at that time. And Christina, Brett, and Patty, we always welcome you back. So if you're available, please stop by. We'd love to have you. And we hope to see you again in the future on edTrends, or maybe visiting us here in person at the School of Education at the University of Albany. So the session would not have been made possible without your knowledge and your presence today. So thank you. And if there are any other questions, we ask that you unmute yourself and raise them. Otherwise, we wish you a wonderful spring semester, as we're already at our midterm point, and it's hard to believe. And as always, edTrends resources and information is always free, and all are always welcomed. So thank you again to our panelists, Brett, Patty, and Christina, and for our planning team, Jonathan, Haesol, and Dr. And Jason Vickers. So thank you all, and we wish you a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks again, all.
Everybody.